Hey everyone, hope you all have had a good first 2 weeks of the league. This video, we're going to be going over the sort of mapping I've been doing for the last few days, and I'm also going to be covering changes to my Spark character for all my Spark viewers out there, because I have made significant changes since the last video. I realized my character was no longer geared optimally for the sort of content I wanted to run, so I had to tech in an Aegis Aurora, which cut my damage by 1/3, but it made the mapping experience much better. And as a Spark character, we probably want to be spending most of our time mapping. So we do want to gear optimally for mapping. Now, as you can see, I'm just running in the middle of hundreds of mobs, and this is not something I ever plan to do on Spark. But with the few gearing changes I made, it is like you're not invincible, but you can definitely just run into a pack of mobs, press your Pandemonium Sentinel, and probably make it out alive. Either way, it's way easier to do that than before. Now, this footage we're watching together is pretty typical of the content I've been running over the past few days. I'm running Crimson Temple, and I'm rolling my maps with the regex I provided in my Mageblood farming strategy video. However, I'm also using a Delirium Orb to add a bit more juice, and I've also spec'd into some of the Beyond nodes on the Atlas passive tree. I'm also using 4 Sextants, making sure they all have some sort of pack size on them, and I'm using the Scarabs I mentioned in the Mageblood farming video. And all of this, while it is juiced quite a bit, it's not really what's causing the difficulty spike, which drove me to drop so much DPS for the Aegis Aurora. The reason I decided to tech into this shield was the combination of the Atlas passives Wrath of the Cosmos and Eldritch Gaze. Wrath of the Cosmos causes us to take 25% increased damage every time we activate a pillar, and this is increased damage from everything in the map. So if we get lucky and get upwards of 6 pillars, that damage we start taking stacks up quite a bit. And all this extra damage gets exacerbated by Eldritch Gaze, which causes each pillar to have 2 downsides instead of 1 downside. There are a lot of these downsides which affect the player and put on a negative debuff for the whole map, which also causes us to take more damage from everything in the map. Some of these range from minus 60 cold res, minus 60 lightning res, which by the way I will never take, to stuff like we take a large percentage of enemies' physical damage as extra damage of a certain element, or also stuff like reduced physical damage taken. And I don't think we've ever had a mechanic where we're just taking so much increased damage from literally everything. So it's putting us in a situation where we're just taking this unexpected damage from stuff that we're generally used to taking certain amounts of damage from. And the damage just gets really big, and it's a lot. I just feel like it's mandatory to have something like Aegis Aurora. And I had enough damage where I could just drop 1/3 of it, and it didn't kill my build. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about this, because I don't like a meta where you're just forced into using this one shield, this one defensive shield. It feels kind of weird, but this is what we're stuck with right now. So if you're looking to do this sort of juiced up content on Spark, just be prepared to not have any damage on your shield, because you're probably going to be wanting to use an Aegis of Aurora, at least for the mapping portion of your gameplay. Let's look at this Aegis shield swap. Now I'm lucky and my damage shield doesn't have any resistances, so I can just take it off and put on the Aegis Aurora when I'm doing maps, and then when I need to do a hard invitation, a hard boss fight, I can just swap the 2 shields and I get that extra 1/3 damage back. However, we still can't just swap the shields because I'm going to guess you're going to have somewhere between 10 and 20,000 armor. And we do want to scale our armor as much as possible when we're using the Aegis shield because it gives us energy shield on block based on our armor. So for me, I'm just simply swapping one item. I had 14,000 armor naturally, and if I take off my silver flask, which is just quality of life, is not necessary, I can put on a basalt flask. This gives us 20% more armor, and we can also craft on increased armor up to 60% for our suffix. And this raised my armor to just under 30,000, so it was really impactful for just a quick flask swap. So I just need to swap two things, and I'm all ready to do mapping without ripping. Now, ideally, using Aegis Aurora for mapping, we would have an astral plate. I already crafted my damaged body armor as Valregalia. Thankfully, the difference between a Valregalia and an astral plate in terms of survivability is pretty small when compared to simply just adding this basalt flask. So, you know what? This isn't a big deal. I'm perfectly fine using the Valregalia. But if you haven't done the craft yet, you might want to think about the astral plate instead. Alright, now on to the Atlas skill tree. So I'm running Fortune Favors the Brave with this node. So I have 10% increased pack size on every map. I'm going to spec out of strong boxes. I'm just going to use all the strong box scarabs I have. I'm not really sure where I'm going to put it yet. I like the Abyss. I'm going to keep all that. Now the two nodes I was talking about that really ramp up the difficulty to insane levels. This is the Wrath of the Cosmos node, and this is the Eldritch Gaze. So I really like the extra loot from this, so I'm not going to stop doing it. I think Aegis Aurora kind of solved the build. You know, I still die on occasion. I'm probably never going to hit 96, but I'm not dying like 3 or 4 times. It's maybe just like 1 death per map. So it's not too bad. The extra currency we get from this is just, you know what, I'm never going to take it off. It's just, I don't want to lose that currency. No matter what strat you're doing, I would always suggest taking all these points and all these points. Now these also raise the difficulty of maps quite a bit because it gives you 30% increase for every modifier, and all those modifiers are all making the map harder, right? So it's going to be like 30% more powerful for every modifier is going to be 30% more powerful. We also get a lot more quant and a lot more pack size. We get a lot more return from our maps with this all spec'd. So just make sure your build's strong enough to at least do this. Now I have some beyond here and some beyond here because my map density is pretty big that I'm actually spawning, even though this is what, like 3%, like that's pretty bad, but I mean, it's not too much points. When I unspec my strong boxes, I'm not too sure where I'm going to put it yet, but it's just a lot of points that I'm kind of wasting in these strong boxes, so I don't know. I'll figure that out. That was my Atlas passive tree, and that wraps up everything I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to include a path of building for my bossing setup as well as for my mapping setup in the description. If you're going to also switch to Aegis Aurora, I would just make note, if you have crit chance on your damage shield, you may need to rebalance your tree to get crit capped again. I had to put in some crit nodes on the passive tree to optimize my damage because I had a lot of crit chance on my shield. Alright, thanks for watching till the end. I will see you guys in the next one.